Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America and across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful December the 9th, 2019. Rondo Deportes. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, as you say, everything down south. I was living the life of Riley. You know, I had a flashback. There was a point back in the 70s, early 80s, when they had this show called Fantasy Island.
Oh, yeah.
That was on TV with Mr. Rourke and Tattoo.
The plane.
And, you know, the plane boss. But, you know, it was all plain and simple in the South over this weekend. I got a chance to go to the SEC championship game on Saturday with LSU and the University of Georgia. Charlton, following day, Sunday, the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers were playing. But the creme de la creme, Charlton, was that night when I had a chance to attend the Miss Universe pageant. Yeah, you know, I haven't seen that many gorgeous women in one place since I threw a house party back when I was in college, Charlton.
Well, you got to come back to California. The plane, but I know it was a lot of good times going on in the South, Big C. I want to say a lot of good times going on with Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our national sponsors on podcast and TV shows. You will hear from Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, Big C Sports, you can find us on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. A lot of great things happen in the world of sports. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, did you say you were a judge in the Miss Universe pageant, or you were just ogling over some of the women? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I could have been a judge. I offered myself as an alternate just in case anybody passed out from all the beauty that was walking across the stage, Charlton. But you talk about a gorgeous weekend. It was at Tyler Perry Studios down in Atlanta, Charlton. Just had a wonderful time to be at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, one of the most gorgeous sports facilities in the world, and then to be able to go see 75 of the most gorgeous women in the world, Charlton, the following night.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking about attending a buffet and not even gaining weight.
Not even gaining weight, Big C. It is good exercise. I hear it gets your heart rate going, too. There's nothing wrong with that. We love the sports universe and everything that comes with it. And I also want to say, before we get into all the great things that the sports world has to offer, I just want to again say congratulations to my daughter graduating in 3.5 years from a major university, double major. So I love you, honey. Keep up the great work. Big C, I know so much happens in the world of sports with beauty pageants and then football games. It's like we're already playing in the playoffs. I do want to give out some acknowledgement to our military veterans. We do offer a national hotline for people going through issues. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255. I notice a lot of NFL teams are doing the same now. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, with all that was exciting in this past weekend in the sports world, especially football, with conference championships being decided and the playoffs being decided, a lot of people have a tendency to forget about the people who make those events so easy to attend and play every year.
Yeah.
And that's our military, Charlton, who goes out and defends our nation tirelessly around the world, even here at home. And we have so many people, Charlton, once they leave the armed ranks of the military, Charlton, that they go through struggles daily in life, making adjustments, getting back into society, just finding their way. They put their feet on the ground, Charlton. And unfortunately, we have this horrific disease that's called suicide that has taken the lives of at least 20 of our veterans on a daily basis here in America, Charlton.
Wow.
We have to find a way to stem this horrific disease. We have this National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, that is there for these veterans and anybody else to call.
Yeah.
To have that voice to listen to, that ear that they can talk into and get that voice back to comfort them, and try to talk them off the ledge, Charlton, to give them a basis to change the direction of their lives if it's going in a negative way. We think so much about Veterans Day and other holidays when it comes to serving veterans or paying homage to them, Charlton, but those veterans are veterans every day, not just that one day, and they go through these struggles every day. And as a nation, we need to find a way to be more sensitive to the needs of our veterans from the military once they're no longer in that joint unit, Charlton, where they have that family that's around them every day and is subjected to being back in society. We see the struggles of just everyday Americans. Think about how difficult it is for those veterans to come out and have to join the forces, Charlton, and try to make adjustments into normal, everyday society. So the Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there every day to help these veterans adjust.
Every single day, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and get some help, and we love bringing that to you. Also, just want to acknowledge Big C Sports voted one of the top podcasts on iHeartRadio podcasts in the largest platform in the universe. So I really appreciate that, too. So, Big C, I just want to get into this whole, I guess you could call a holiday season. We just got finished with Thanksgiving and now getting ready for, of course, the Christmas holiday, depending on how people celebrate that or not. But I do want to look at a couple of things that happen in the world of college football, and going back to the championship games. And I look at what happened we got the Final Four now. We have, I think, maybe the best setup for this. We have 3 undefeated teams and 1 team with a loss. We know LSU, Clemson, Ohio State undefeated. Oklahoma, the only team with a loss. Have you ever seen a better field, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, every year that you have the college football playoffs, you have a great field. It's nice to have 3 teams undefeated. The ideal situation would to have 4 teams undefeated. Everybody's talking about the rankings, who's seeded 1 through 3, and why is it that way? It really doesn't matter who's seeded 1 through 4. You got the top 4 teams in the country playing each other. It plays itself out. That's the bottom line of the reason why you have the playoffs. And the playoffs just don't start with these 4 teams, Charlton. It actually started with the conference championships. As everybody says, we need to have more teams. I don't know what everybody doesn't recognize about what the conference championships are. You have a 10-team playoff realistically in college football for an opportunity to play yourselves into the Final Four. There are 10 positions to get the Final Four, and that's what it comes down to. So this college playoff is expanded. It is a series. So when we looked at the conference playoffs that occurred, the teams that were supposed to win won in all of those games. You look at the Pac-12 game, Charlton. Oregon was the better team in that. They knew if they won, they had no chance of getting into the playoffs, but they knocked out a playoff potentially worthy opponent in Utah. When you look at the Big 12 championship game, Charlton, Oklahoma wins, they're in, because in the SEC championship, we knew that LSU was the best team in that game, and they proved it by dominating. When you look at Ohio State dropping in the rankings, they got their hats handed to them in the first half by Wisconsin. But they proved that they were the better team, and they came out and dominated in the second half and pulled away. So when we look at the selection committee, it got it right. But the playoffs don't start in 2 weeks. They were last weekend, Charlton, that we just came out of. That was a 10-team playoff. And out of that 10 teams, the top 4 gets into the Final Four.
They will get into the Final Four. And I love wagging the tail of the Pac-12, but I didn't think that Utah belonged in the Final Four. And I know sometimes you get flack by saying, why are you rooting against the area that you cover? But I going throughout the season, I thought Oregon was the better team, but they had a hiccup against Arizona State. And again, the best team shows up that day. It doesn't mean you're going to win every single time you show up. But
you watched that Pac-12 championship game, Charlton. Give me your analogy of the crowd and what should the nation think about the Pac-12 championship game attendance.
Well, they had about 55,000 at the game, so maybe they pumped in a couple of fans too. But even without that, what I thought I saw was the fact that they're too far away from their homes, and because it's snowing. And all those things matter. And I know some regions of the country, they don't have to deal with snow. It's not going to snow down in Georgia. It's not going to snow down in New Orleans, but they have their own issues to go through. So I think it's asking a lot of a lot of families to travel through the snow from Utah. It doesn't snow in Oregon, I don't believe, but I know it snows in Utah. So to get people to come out to rainy Northern California, it's just not the perfect climate. But they did make a solution, Big C. I still don't know if I agree with it, but the Pac-12 is going to move their championship game to the city of sin, Las Vegas, for college kids. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, and on that attendance that you talked about, I talked with some friends of mine that were in the media and a part of that broadcast felt an actual attendance at Levi Stadium was 32,000 people. 32,000 people for a conference championship game. And if you look at the overall conference attendance, if you look at the Power 5 conferences,
yeah,
the Southeast Conference lead the nation, Charlton, in attendance. They average 74,000 attendance a game in the Southeast Conference. The the SEC Conference.
Yeah.
The Big Ten Conference, Charlton, averages 65,000. The Big 12 averages 57,000. The Atlantic Coast Conference, ACC, averages 49,000.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 comes in fifth place of the Power 5 conferences, Charlton, at a meek 46,000 fans a game. 46,000 fans a game. And when people say, well, what can they do? If you don't have the attendance, then the big boys in television don't look at you as a draw. And then when you have the evidence of less than 35,000 at your conference championship game, now, if you want to talk about bad weather, you got to go up to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
In Indianapolis, Charlton. You got snow in Wisconsin, you got snow in Ohio, which is just as bad as Utah.
Yeah.
But that stadium there in Indianapolis was packed, sold out. It was a sea of red.
Well, it was an
in Indianapolis,
stadium,
which is a city of blue.
Right.
So, I mean, weather is not the reason that holds people back from getting the conference championship games. It's what goes on all along throughout the year. I think by moving the game to Las Vegas may be a major attraction because now the fans have something else to do other than just the game. So they're going to have the city that will also appeal. But if this move to Las Vegas doesn't sell out, Charlton, for the Pac-12, they're really going to have to reconsider how they look at having a championship game.
Yeah, I think that's true. But it does take a lot more when it's 35 degrees to sit out in the cold. I don't care where anybody is. I don't think a lot of people do that, even in NFL stadiums, when it comes to going out to see games. But I don't want to see teams punished because if they're good enough to beat anyone, if the fans don't want to make that track. I was traveling over the weekend, too. It's dangerous on the high. In fact, even in California, because in order to get to California from Utah, you either got to fly or drive. And the CHP has shut down Interstate 80 for about 8 hours. They're saying don't even get on the road. So I understand that plays a part, too. But I still want to see, good football. I also want to get your thoughts on this talk about Clemson. And Clemson not playing anybody, but they do play. They beat everybody on their schedule except for North Carolina, in my opinion. But they have a big blowout win over Virginia. So let's say Pac-12, maybe the fans didn't show up to sit in the rain. But in the ACC, I think the weather was decent, but then you have a blowout game. So how do we even make the conference championships matter anyway? It's almost not fair that you can win your conference, and then you got to play in a conference championship. AKA Ohio State could have lost. Mix of your thoughts.
But that's what I mean about the expanded playoffs. That's what the conference championship games do. They are the expanded playoff that a lot of people have sit up and cried and said, well, we got to put more than just 4 teams in. And like I keep saying, there are 10 teams in the playoffs for the college football championship.
Yeah.
This is the reason why you have the 5 conference championship games. So you take the leaders of those 5 conferences, you take the top 4 from those championship games that are played. And it proved out that the top 4 teams won, Charlton.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, you got 3 teams that are undefeated and a 4th team that is 12-1.
Yeah.
So those are the top 4 records left out of playing 5 games in a playoff system.
Yep.
And that's the moving on to the Final 4.
Let me get your thoughts on the SEC and when Georgia, they have the SEC East, SEC West. So Georgia wins their conference championship, and they get blown out by LSU. But I still believe that Georgia was never the second best team in that conference anyway. I've always thought it was Alabama. I'm not making excuses that Tua was injured. People get injured. But even Alabama lost to an Auburn team, but it's almost top-heavy. So let's say if LSU played Auburn and LSU played Georgia again, maybe they would not beat them by that margin. But I even called on Friday's show that it would be at least a 2-touchdown win, maybe 3, and it happened to come out to be true. So does that prove anything that maybe Georgia just had a bad day at the office? Big C, your thoughts?
No, Georgia didn't have a bad day at the office. LSU is good as advertising, and I had also mentioned that the quarterback Jake Fromm in 2 of the last 3 games prior to going into the conference championship had completed less than 50% of his passes. He had struggled. They were also without their top 2 receivers when they started the game.
Yeah.
One was suspended, one had a bad ankle, Charlton, and he was out indefinitely till next season.
Yeah.
Then they also lost their number 3 receiver in the game to an ankle injury, Charlton. Then the top running back was not playing.
Yeah.
They went into the game undermanned, Charlton, and they didn't have a chance. The best chance they had was winning the coin flip.
Well, let me get your thoughts on this. This Mike Tyson got knocked out by Buster Douglas. Had they fought 10 times, he would have won 9 out of those 10. When I look at SEC football, Alabama not being in that game because they had a pick 6 that was returned, by the quarterback just throwing a pass, and the running back didn't turn around. Auburn took it to the house. We know they got the extra time to kick the field goal. All those little things that matter. I still feel that not having Alabama play for all the marbles is really robbing the fans because they're a better team than Georgia. But you can't win everything. But is that the same sentiment down south, or do they really think that Georgia was the second best product the SEC had to offer? I think they may be like number 4. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Alabama couldn't have made the conference championship game regardless because they had lost to LSU.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the conference stacks up. I mean, just like when you look at the ACC.
Yeah.
You have a northern and southern division of the ACC.
Yeah.
Virginia won the northern division. Clemson won the southern division of that.
Yeah.
When you look at the Big Ten title talk, you have East and West in the Big Ten. Wisconsin just so happened to win, one half. Ohio State won the other half.
Yeah.
And so that's how it ranks. You even have that in the Pac-12. It's not about records all the time, Charlton. It's what you do head-to-head.
Yeah.
Alabama had an opportunity to beat LSU.
Yeah.
They didn't complete that task. And so subsequently, they finished second in that Western Division of the SEC. So LSU had the right. And if they played LSU again, LSU would have beaten Alabama again. Regardless, LSU is just that good of a football team right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. So when we look at the festivities for Christmas, we talk about the holiday season. Friday, December 20th, the Bahamas Bowl is coming up. You have Buffalo 7-5 versus Charlotte 7-5, and I'm sure a lot of people will get on the plane to go down to see that. But Frisco, Texas Bowl, Utah State 7-5. Versus Kent State 6-6, and that's a game I'm sure a lot of people will travel through the inclement weather to see. December 21st, the Celebration Bowl in Atlanta. When you have the HBC, the North Carolina A&T 8-3 versus Alcorn State 9-3. It's a noontime game, and guess what, Big C? It's on ABC Sports. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the number of football games that have been played here in Atlanta lately, Charlton, you look at the SEC championship game, Charlton, you're talking about the Celebration Bowl between the HBCs. You're going to get the semifinal round of the college football playoffs, as they say.
Yeah.
So Alabama, when you think about it, is hosting 3 championship games. Well, Atlanta's hosting 3 championship games in a matter of 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's a
2
lot.
weeks, really.
A lot of sunshine. And something else with a shine going to be served up down there in Georgia, Big C. A couple of other games as we start in Mexico, Central Michigan 8-5 versus San Diego State 9-3. Now you're going to get people to fly from Michigan to watch an 8-5 squad play against San Diego State coming from the West Coast. I don't know about the crowd attendance for that game. The Cure Bowl. If there's a cure, we all need a cure of something, Big C. Sometimes a cure for hangover in Orlando, Florida. Liberty 7-5 versus Georgia Southern 7-5, and that's on CBS Sports Net. But then the Boca Raton Bowl in Florida, Big C, SMU 10-2 versus Florida Atlantic University 10-3. Those are 2 pretty good games for a bowl game, and I think it's properly located in Florida. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as you look at the overload of bowl games, and they're starting next week, Charlton.
Yeah.
People haven't even gotten to Christmas. I remember growing up when you had basically 5 or 6 bowls, Charlton, and The first bowl game of the night was the Astro Bluebonnet Bowl down in the old Houston Astrodome.
I remember that.
Down in Houston, Texas. And that was New Year's Eve. And then on New Year's Day, Charlton, you had the four big bowl games. You had the Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and Orange Bowl. Now there's a bowl for every cereal bowl out there.
Yeah, there's a bowl for every cereal bowl. And then Camilla Bowl, Montgomery, Alabama, Florida International University, 6-6 versus Arkansas State. They are 7-5. And then there's just so many bowls. Las Vegas Bowl, Boise State, 12-1 versus Washington. That's 7-5. Now, I know you got to regionalize these games. So I can say playing the game in Nevada between Boise and Washington, maybe it can make sense. But I think Boise State, I thought their record was more. They lost more than one game, in my opinion, but it says 12-1. But to have them play a Washington team that's 7-5, I thought Boise should have been matched up with a better team. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you say better team, so that means that you're thinking that the Pac-12 is not that good a team.
7-5, no.
Boise State is one of those teams that, when you think about the group of five, which is they're part of it, and Memphis had the best record of the group of five because of overall teams that they played. Boise only lost the one game this year, Charlton, and they won their conference championship against the University of Hawaii. But when Memphis won that match against Cincinnati in the American Athletic Conference, Charlton, it propelled them to the top-ranked group of five teams, and that's the reason why Memphis will be playing on New Year's Day and Boise will be playing in Las Vegas. But this is not, if you think about the Pac-12 and how Boise has dominated the Pac-12 over the years, what would it say about the Pac-12? This is a team that was in the college football playoffs just 3 years ago.
Yeah.
What happens if Boise dominates them in this game, Charlton? What does that say for the Pac-12?
Well, it's two different teams, though. It's a lot like Alabama or South Carolina beating Georgia. What's it say about Georgia? If you can't take different years and put it together, but I just think Boise, if you have one loss, you deserve a better bowl than having a team with 5 losses. That's almost half their games. New Orleans Bowl, University of Alabama, 9-4 versus Appalachian State. Similar thing, they're 12-1. Why not put Appalachian State and Boise in a game you would have two 12-1 teams? Would that be more appealing even for the TV audience? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you would think that it would, but, some of these games, as you say, get regionalized, and with an overload of games, you want to see who can travel the best fan base, the shortest of distance, Charlton, to get them into a game.
That's true. University of Central Florida. Remember all the talk about Central Florida wanting to be in the Final Four, and they got a chance to play LSU last year down in the Fiesta Bowl, and LSU showed that they were just more physical. But now they're back in the bowl game. This time they're in Tampa, so they'll probably travel well there. 9-3 versus Marshall, 8-4. And then we have, on Christmas Eve, you have the Hawaii Bowl, Honolulu, Hawaii. Now, people want to go to Hawaii. It's BYU 7-5 versus Hawaii 9-5. And that's part of the old Western Athletic Conference rivals. When BYU was actually in the Western Athletic Conference, they were also in the same conference with Hawaii. So kind of a reunion of sorts. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, we'll see how well the people travel out of the snow of Utah, Charlton, to get out to Hawaii instead of to San Francisco.
That makes a lot of sense. It may not be snowing when they get to Hawaii, though, Big C. Independence Bowl. Do you really want your Independence, Shreveport, Louisiana? It's almost like Washington playing in the Las Vegas Bowl against Boise State. Washington and Miami, they split the national championship, I believe, in 91-92 season. And now, so Miami 6-6, they're playing Louisiana Tech, that's 9-3, in the Shreveport Bowl. That has to be almost an insult for the Miami program, but not this year's team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that program is not the program of the 80s and 90s, Charlton, that we were so used to seeing dominate college football.
Yeah.
They're going to have their hands full playing against Louisiana Tech, Charlton. That's Terry Bradshaw's alma mater. And I'd take Louisiana Tech in that game.
Would that be so? I guess Michael Irvin won't be on stomping for that game, Big C. Detroit, the Quick Lane Bowl, Detroit, Michigan. Pittsburgh 7-5 versus Eastern Michigan. They're 6-6. They got one more win to get them into that bowl game to go at 6-6. It may be a draw because they're at home. The Military Bowl, Annapolis, Maryland. North Carolina versus Temple. I'm sure when the great Mac Brown came back to college football, he wanted more than the Military Bowl, but he'll take it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's a start, Charlton. You've been out of college football coaching for a half decade. You come back in. You have a season where you develop a freshman quarterback, make him a star. You take the number one of the top teams in the country, Charlton, to the last final seconds of the game. You know, not a bad season for a return back to college football.
Not a bad. And I still say they beat Clemson, and they had the same camera crew that saw the 49ers and the Saints when Kittle got into the end zone by not having the ball touch the pylon. My opinion, we'll touch on that as we cover NFL Pinstripe Bowl in New York City. Is this the best you could do for New York City? Wake Forest 8-4. You bring in mighty Michigan State, the Spartans. In New York City, is that appealing for the fans of New York? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in New York City, you don't get much football anyway when you think about the Giants and Jets. Maybe you'll get a competitive game.
Yeah, maybe you will. And so there's a lot of bowl games. The Texas Bowl, Houston has Oklahoma State 8-4 versus Texas A&M. That's 7-5. Holiday Bowl, which used to always be a staple. In fact, watching the Holiday Bowl is where BYU used to always set up shop. But this year we have Iowa 9-3 versus Southern California. That's 8-4. These are two teams that at one time would represent the Pac-12 and the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl. But it's still a nice consolation prize for both programs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Iowa is a very physical team that's going to travel out to the West Coast, Charleston. They have played in the Holiday Bowl before and won that game. It's going to be an exciting offensive explosion.
It's going to be a good explosion. Also, Camping World Bowl, Notre Dame. Camping World Bowl. Something doesn't make sense. The Camping World Bowl, Orlando, Florida, Notre Dame, they're 10-2. It's a noontime game versus Iowa State at 7-5. And you would think that, just like we talked about Washington and talked about Miami, 10-2 should get you a better game than the Camping World Bowl in Orlando, Florida for Notre Dame. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, you think about the stadium there in Orlando, Charlton, a very nice facility for college football, one of those stadiums that holds about 75,000. You're right there in Disneyland. It's about the name, the sponsorship.
Yeah.
It's not about the competitors in their game. And you look at these two teams, Iowa State and Notre Dame, they match up very well, two similar quarterbacks.
Now, that's very well said. I want to take what's called the Big C timeout, and I want to come back and get your thoughts on the Peach Bowl. We're going to talk about, it's just so much going on in Atlanta. We have the LSU and Oklahoma, and then we're going up to the Fiesta Bowl with Clemson and Ohio State. And Ohio State's never beaten Clemson. That's amazing when you think about who's going to be number one or number two. I know we can't go back 40 years to determine who's going to win this year, but I think that's amazing when you look at those teams. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You're here. Welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. We'll take the pause, the timeout. We'll be right back in just a moment, and we hope you'll come back and join us. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. I know we talked about a lot of college football games. Don't want to cover all of them because I want to hit some NFL. But I do want to get your thoughts on a couple of more. It used to be the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And this year, I think we're going to be treated to a treat. You have Wisconsin, and they're coming also out of the Big Ten, and they are 10-3 on the season. They're going to play Oregon, which outside of the loss to Arizona State would have been in the Final Four. The granddaddy of them all, the great Keith Jackson used to say, "Whoa, Nelly," and that was a game I always got up for, Big C. I think Oregon at 11-2 and Wisconsin at 10-3 is a very solid matchup, and it goes back to tradition, the Big Ten, Pac-12. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I really like Wisconsin in this game and running back Jonathan Taylor. You think about Jonathan Taylor in 3 years of college football, Charlton. He has rushed for well in excess of 6,000 yards already. This is one dominant young man. And no one in the Pac-12 is seeing anybody like Jonathan Taylor on the ground. They have a pretty decent passing game. I know that Herbert looked sharp against Utah. Verdell had over 200 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
But this is a game where when you come out and you're going to have a chance to thaw out from Wisconsin, they play some smash mouth football.
Yep.
I believe they won their last 2 Rose Bowl appearances also.
They're a dominant team. I'd be remiss if I did not mention 2 coaches that are sometimes a little bit curmudgeon-y. It's called the Citrus Bowl, Orlando, Florida. You have Jim Harbaugh. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. We'll see if Nick Saban agrees. Michigan's 9-3. So much talk of them being in the Final Four this year. Versus Alabama. It's almost like we didn't make it. It's almost like when Trump won the election, people like he won. Alabama's like, what do you mean we didn't get in? So Alabama is 10-2. There's something about losing your 2 games by high-scoring games where a pick 6 is in the way of it. So give me your feeling. That, to me, is a national championship kind of game, even though Michigan hasn't won anything outside of being voted national champion about in the 1990s. Big to your thoughts.
Well, Michigan has proven, Charlton, that they can't play against teams with high prolific offenses, and Alabama will bring one of those into this game. When you think about Jones, their backup quarterback, Charlton, who did not do too bad of a job against Auburn in that game. Yes, they had the 2 turnovers that were horrific in the outcome of the game, but they have too much offense for Michigan to handle. Michigan is an up-and-down offensive team, but they show when teams can throw the ball that they're in trouble. Alabama has probably the top, if not the second best receiving core in the country.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Also, a couple other games. The famous Idaho Potato Bowl, Boise, Idaho, Ohio 6-6 versus Nevada 7-5. We have the Arm Bowl, the Fort Worth, Texas, Southern Mississippi 7-5 versus Tulane 6-6. And then I want to get into these games. To me, is what everybody's fought so long for. Sugar Bowl, Georgia 11-2 versus Baylor 11-2. But I want to get your thoughts on, if you think about why it's so important to win your conference. I think we've seen that over the last couple of weeks. We've seen it over the last weekend, actually. So I want to take you to the games that everybody's been talking about. And to me, whether you win the national championship or not, I think some of these teams that play their conference championships, even though you got to win them to get in, it makes it so difficult. But give me your feeling when you have a Clemson that hasn't lost a game in I think they won 27 in a row, and now they're going to get to play, obviously, a team that they maybe didn't want to play. They're playing Ohio State, but you got to beat somebody. You can't keep ducking everybody. But give me your feeling on that, because I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup. Ohio State 13-0, Clemson 13-0. It's in Glendale, Arizona, so nowhere there will be an impact at all. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this is a game on paper that everybody loves to see. Everybody says Clemson hasn't played anybody. I think they kicked the hell out of 13 different opponents throughout the year. So,
yeah.
I mean, they beat as many people as Ohio State beat.
Yeah.
So, in the hand, who beat who? They beat as many people as LSU beat. They beat one more opponent than what Oklahoma beat.
Yeah.
Clemson beat everybody that was on their schedule. They won 28 consecutive games over the last couple seasons in college football.
Yeah.
So when people say that Clemson hasn't played anybody, well, they played everybody that was on the schedule. You can't forecast what your record is going to be, Charlton, 10 years ago and saying these teams are not going to be good now.
Yeah.
Clemson is playing the schedule that was slated a decade ago, and so they went true to form, and they beat the hell out of all those opponents.
Yep.
I give them the advantage against Ohio State. I mean, right now, Travis Etienne is running as good as any running back in the country.
Yeah.
He's running as good as A.J. Dobbs. He's running as good as the kid out of Wisconsin, as well as Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
But what he has that the rest of those guys don't have, Charlton, is Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And that receiving core at Clemson is as good as advertised. I understand Ohio State has an outstanding receiving core, and Justin Fields has done a tremendous job in his first year at Ohio State. But I think what Trevor Lawrence has right now is what nobody else has, Charlton. He has the big game experience. He's been down this road before. When everybody said Clemson played nobody last year,
yeah.
Remember, Clemson played the same schedule this year they played last year, and they beat all those opponents.
Yeah.
Then they got to Alabama, and they said, well, they haven't played anybody.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, Alabama, I think it scored 13 points on them after Clemson had run up some 48 points on them.
Yeah.
So they beat who's ever in front of them. I give Clemson the pure advantage in this game because they have the chip on their shoulder that nobody respects them.
And I agree. I looking at this team's play, I think the Big Ten plays better football than the ACC. You can look at all the teams that have been competing and ranked in the top 10 this season that come out of the Big Ten, whether it's Penn State, Michigan at one time, it was Minnesota at one time, and of course you look at Wisconsin, they were there also. So obviously this conference is a better conference. But when I look at...
we constantly talk about conference, better conference, team, better team. They always talk about who's ranked in the top 25, who's ranked in the top 10.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant now. The top 10, the top 25 is irrelevant. The only thing that matters right now is the top 4. It's not about the 13 people that you've played prior to coming up to your next game, Charlton. It's about the next game up.
Yeah.
And these 4 teams that have made the semifinals in the college football playoffs, there's no disputing that they're the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah.
And especially the 3 undefeated teams. There's no disputing they're the top 3 teams in the country. Is that, you can sit there and say, well, you lost to this guy, or you played this guy's strength of schedule. Strength of schedule means nothing when you line up against the guys on the field that you're playing on Saturday.
Yeah, and that will be found out pretty soon. It's almost like wanting that fight to come up, and when they put you in the ring and they close the octagon cage, sometimes it's a little bit different. So right now, Clemson, if you believe the guys in Las Vegas, it was between a 1 and 2 point favorite. I think that if a team falls behind and can come back, it would be Clemson that could fall behind. So Ohio State has to get the lead and let their defense go to work for them. That's my opinion, because they're not going to fall behind and come back against this team the way they did against Wisconsin. And now a game that some people look at as a blowout already. I don't know if it would be a blowout, but if there is going to be a team with a double-digit loss, it would not surprise me at all to see LSU jump on Oklahoma, even though I'm sure the bowl committee, they're celebrating that Utah lost to Oregon, so they didn't have to have a Utah team in there that only scored, 15 points against Oregon. So I don't think they would have wanted them to play LSU on national TV. LSU coming in 13-0, Oklahoma 12-1. You have all the history of Oklahoma. It's going to be a madhouse, and they're playing the game in Atlanta. LSU has been accustomed to that environment, getting into that stadium. Give me your feeling on that matchup, Big C, your thoughts.
This game is about the Cinderella story, Charlton. You're talking 2 transfer quarterbacks. One quarterback that couldn't make it at Ohio State in Joe Burrow. Then you're talking about a quarterback who's been in this stadium before, Charlton, that down in Atlanta, won a national championship, won an SEC title, Charlton, and could not keep his starting job at Alabama.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts coming back to his stomping grounds where he's been on 3 different occasions, Charlton, and had memorable moments in each one of those, walking out with a national championship and a conference title. I mean, everybody who has a heartfelt story about college football is pulling for Jalen Hurts in this game.
Yeah.
Is Oklahoma outmanned? Possibly. When I think about body to body up and down the field, LSU has the better team all across the line.
Yeah.
But when I look at quarterbacks, there's a lot of equality there between the quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts has something in this game that he hadn't had in the 2 previous games when he was at Alabama, the ability to throw the ball. And that's what he has developed at the University of Oklahoma. So that's the tangible in the game that he's coming in to try to be an equalizer. I don't know if this game will be a blowout because I've seen what Oklahoma has done in the past against more dominant teams. We saw that last year in the Orange Bowl. Once they figured things out, they basically shut down Alabama in the second half. They can't not allow LSU to get up by more than 14 points and stay in this game because we've seen them struggle in those situations. But I look for this to be a more competitive game than what the odd makers make.
Well, it still feels like, I was saying, in order to beat LSU, you got to score 40. I think they got close to that in the win in the SEC championship game over Georgia. I think the same thing holds true for Oklahoma. So we'll see what happens in that. Final rankings, LSU, number 1. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, Oklahoma. Number 5, Georgia. Number 6, Oregon. Number 7, Florida, followed by number 8, Baylor. Number 9, Alabama, followed by number 10, Utah. And then Wisconsin gets in at number 11. So it's all fair love and war. We will definitely see what happens when they kick it off for the college football playoffs. And may the best team win. And we always love having the best team win games. Big C, I want to jump right into the NFL. I know, and I want to start with the Thursday game because I didn't get a chance to talk to you Friday. The Thursday, Chicago Bears over the Dallas Cowboys, 31-24. You were saying that the Cowboys been in trouble for a long time now. Your thoughts on how great Mitch Trubisky played in that Thursday night game, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, for Mr. Trubisky, I mean, he's seemed to come out of his doldrums. He's had consecutive games with 3 touchdown passes and over 300 yards passing, Charlton. But when I look at the Dallas Cowboys, their real problem is their owner.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones is the only owner in professional sports who has to find a damn microphone every time that the game is on or whatever is going on. He has to find the microphone.
Yeah.
I think he's the turmoil within the organization. You go back to when Jimmy Johnson had the team, Charlton, wins 2 championships coming out of college. He built the team in Dallas.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones wasn't getting the media love. All of a sudden, he ran Jimmy Johnson out of town. He holds the press conference. He brings in Barry Switzer, another college coach.
Yeah.
Barry wins another championship. Jimmy Johnson's still not getting any love. He gets rid of Barry.
Yeah.
Now he controls the mic. Every coach that he's brought in, Charlton, you got an owner sitting there holding the press conferences. The players are sitting around saying, who's in charge? Is it the coach? Is it the owner?
Yeah.
We don't know what we're doing. We don't know who we're supposed to listen to and follow. That's the problem with the Dallas Cowboys. It's not the players on the field. It's the owner being involved. I mean, every owner of an NFL team has an opportunity to come on the sideline to hold a press conference.
Yep.
31 of them choose not to.
Yeah.
Just one. And which organization, which is supposed to be America's team, is in disarray? You think anybody would be holding a press conference? It'd be Robert Kraft in New England.
Yeah. Well, we all said it's all fair, love, and war, like Jerry says. I earn the right to say my opinion. The Atlanta Falcons, they go to 4-9 on the season with a 40-20 win over the Carolina Panthers. And I thought the Carolina, when they got rid of Rivera, a lot of their players are looking for a place that they can also land, Big C. And I just want to get your opinion. When you think about Matt Ryan's career-long 93-yard touchdown pass that propelled Atlanta onto that win, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, not only a career-long 92-yard touchdown pass, Charlton, but he also became the 10th quarterback in NFL history to eclipse the 50,000-yard passing mark in this game.
Yeah.
I think that Carolina was down after losing their head coach, Ron Rivera, with just 4 games to go in the season. The players are sitting there like, what do we have to play for? And they came in without a game plan.
Yeah, that's true, Big C. The New York Jets, 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 may have gotten the same luck that the officiating crews have been given to the New England Patriots over the years, but the Jets get the win. They go to 5-8 with a 22-21 win over Miami, and Fickens' field goal, controversial call. It led to the Jets going past the Dolphins. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the Dolphins had been on a smooth run, Charlton, but we've seen so much of this lately in the NFL with bad officiating.
Yeah.
And you think about it, this call came from New York. It came from headquarters. It didn't come from the field.
Right.
They reviewed that from New York
right
and overturned that, Charlton, against Brian Flores. And I understand why he was livid in that game. The Dolphins got robbed.
Yeah, they got robbed in broad daylight, Big C. Normally they got to be in the water to get robbed. They got robbed in broad daylight, Big C. But that's what happens in New York City. And then you look at Tampa with a 38-35 win over Indianapolis. They go to 6-7 on the season, and the Colts fall to 6-7. Winston throws for 456 yards and 4 touchdowns as the Bucs rally over the Colts. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I actually think he threw 5 touchdowns in that game, Charles, because Darius Leonard for the Colts took one back to the house also. But, when you think about Jameis Winston, he opened the game with his first pass throwing an interception. I mean, he just loves throwing to his opponents. And this game is more about Indianapolis losing than it was about Tampa winning, because what has happened to the Colts? This is a team who knocked off the Texans not too long ago, and now they're struggling, Charlton, and most likely out of the playoffs.
Yeah, you look at the Vikings, they go to 9-4 with a 20-7 win over the Detroit Lions that are 3-9-1. And the Vikings delivered a nice knockout punch, if you want to call it that, with a 20-7 dominant win over the Detroit Lions. And Detroit, it's a shame that their fans have to look forward to the same thing next year, Big C, but a good win nonetheless by the defense of the Vikings. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Vikings are winning the games that they're supposed to win. Teams with sub-500 records. That's been what your cousin has done throughout his career. We're going to be interested to see what he does against another team with a winning record when that comes around again.
I want to get you to what's called the game of the day, maybe. San Francisco 49ers, 48, New Orleans Saints, 46. And it's amazing when you look at that game. Kittle was called for a touchdown. and I don't think he got in, but they didn't show enough replays of it. The 49ers go to 11-2. The Saints fall to 10-3. To me, it was I think the highest scoring game that those two programs have ever played. At one time, they were actually both in the NFC West, if that made any sense. Give me your feelings. Jimmy G going in and out-dueling the good old boy from down south, Big C, and Drew Brees. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this was a pretty good hit-up matchup between the quarterbacks, Charlton. Jimmy Garoppolo threw 4 touchdown passes. Drew Brees threw 5. And to me, this game was more about the lack of defense.
Yeah.
When you look at it, here's the San Francisco 49ers. They're supposed to be walking in with the best defensive team in football, the best pass rush in football, Charlton. Yet Drew Brees drops them for 5 touchdown passes in this game.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo proved his mettle in this game, being able to bring the 49ers back in the last minute of the game, Charlton, to get them in place for a game-winning field goal. And I also think that the 49ers let the Saints score on that last drive to give them time on the clock, Charlton, to be able to move the ball down the field. But an electrifying game nevertheless. This reminds me a lot of the game in Los Angeles last year between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Rams when we had that tremendous shootout of another NFC West team.
Yeah, I agree. These teams, it would be so great if the universe allowed those two teams to play again in the playoffs. The Buffalo, listen to this, Buffalo Bills, they fall to 9-4 by the skin of their teeth. The Ravens climb to 11-2 with a 24-17 win over Buffalo. The game was not as close as the score, but you got to give the Bills credit for fighting back. The Ravens clinched the AFC playoff berth, a 24-17 win over the Bills. And good old boy, who should be a defensive back, Lamar Jackson, becomes the second quarterback in NFL history to rush for over 1,000 yards. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think the Buffalo Bills gave everybody a blueprint on how to defend Lamar Jackson and held him under 45 yards rushing in this game, Charlton. And they played stifling defense. And I look at the Bills. They still have an opportunity to win the AFC East Division, Charlton, to dethrone the New England Patriots. So this game was much better than what a lot of people thought. I mean, just because you don't get a lot of high-scoring numbers, you have to look at the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, and you look at Jackson, 40 yards rushing, as you mentioned, up his total to 1,017, which is 23 shy of breaking the record set by Michael Vick back in 2006. So he'll most likely get that record. Big C, the Cleveland Browns, 27-19 over the Cincinnati Bengals, and you would expect that to be the case. But Odell Beckham Jr., he wants to get out of there. And the Browns, obviously, they have so much drama because they don't know how to win yet. And so even when they win, Baker Mayfield can't say the right thing. But 27-19, they go to 6-7 on the season, and the Bengals fall to 1-12. But do you even think that the Browns will get to 500 this year, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the Browns did the right thing in this game, Charlton. They ran through Nick Chubb. They didn't run through Nick Chubb enough. You think about it, he had 15 carries and amassed 107 yards on the ground and a touchdown. When this team is successful, it is Nick Chubb's team. It's not Baker Mayfield's team, and that's what the Browns need to learn. I don't know if the head coach, Freddie Kitchens, is intelligent enough to understand that when the Browns have had success, it's been because of Nick Chubb.
99 yards rushing after halftime. Maybe they figured something out, Big C. They got to start. Well, the season's almost over now, so it doesn't matter. You look at the Green Bay Packers, and Discount Double Check was doing this thing with a 20-15 win over the Washington Redskins. Green Bay goes to 10-3. The Redskins fall to 3-10. And then you look at Aaron Jones leads the Packers past Washington. It's just amazing how they do so much in Green Bay to win football games. Even when they play a bad team in Washington, it's just a matter of fact that they have always been a complete playoff team, at least when they're at home. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this game was all about Aaron Jones in this game, Charlton, and he's been the key to the Packers' success this year. He's offered them that threat that they hadn't had consistently in the past couple of years, a running back who can do it all, who can run the ball, who can catch the ball out of the backfield. I know Aaron Rodgers get all the publicity, but when you look at the success of the Green Bay Packers this year, it's been much as it is with the Cleveland Browns. When the Browns have been successful and dominated teams, the ball has gone through Nick Chubb. It has been the same way this year for the Green Bay Packers. The ball has gone through Aaron Jones, and they've always had a victory when he's had a big game.
Good old boy had a career rushing high, 134 yards, Big C, just 16 carries. It's like you always say, you got to run the ball more if you want to win games. I think people are trying to figure out. What I can't figure out is The good old boys down in Texas, Houston Texans, they fall to 8-5. The Denver Broncos, a 38-24 win. They go to 5-8 on the season. Locke throws 3 touchdowns in the first half. As the Broncos beat the Texans were still celebrating from the win against the Patriots. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, I've been perplexed about O'Brien, the head coach in Texas, for the past couple of years, thinking he's not the right coach for Deshaun Watson to understand what this young man's skill set is and exploit it to its fullest. And it proved itself once again in this loss, Charlton, to the hapless Denver Broncos. He's outdueled by Drew Lock in this game, and the Broncos defense, they had no answer for it. This was an electrifying offense that just a week ago we saw stifle the New England Patriots, Charlton, and they had no answer for the depleted the Denver Broncos team. I think O'Brien has to go win or lose, Charlton, getting into the playoffs this year. He has to go like Rivera did.
Final 10 minutes, the Los Angeles Chargers go to 5-8 with a 45-10 beatdown of Jacksonville. The Chargers in their skid. They gave the Jaguars their 5th straight lopsided loss. So much for Gardner Minshew. Phillip Rivers throws for 314 yards in the win. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the nucleus of the Chargers offense this year, Charlton, and all year long, you got to look at the running back position. Austin Eckler. As this team has gone, he has had successful outings. And when they utilize him to his full extent, I mean, he's one of the most dynamic running backs out of the backfield. Everyone talks about Saquon Barkley and how much of a threat he is. I don't know if Saquon Barkley is as good as Austin Eckler. Eckler just doesn't have commercials, but when it comes to playing on the field between the hash marks, Austin Eckler is Phillip Rivers' safety net and go-to guy.
He's doing his thing. Big C, the Tennessee Titans bring that moonshine to the black hole. The crowd was a little bit subdued. I was wondering, why are they so quiet at the black hole? Okay, they played a team from Tennessee. The Tennessee Titans go to 8-5 with a 42-21 beatdown of the Oakland Raiders. And it just didn't make any sense how the Raiders had just melded in. Tannehill throws for 391 yards and would have gotten over 400 had somebody not dropped a couple of passes. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if the Raiders mailed it in or they got it kicked in, Charlton. I think that's what was more likely. When I look at Ryan Tannehill, and this game is all about him. Since becoming the starter in Tennessee, he is 5-1. He makes me think about last year when Lamar Jackson took over in Baltimore, and they said, hey, Joe Flacco, thanks for what you've done in the past. You were a number 1 draft pick, but you're out of here for this number 1 draft pick. I see the same thing with Mike Vrabel and Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. Everyone, when Marcus Mariota was benched, like, what? You're benching him for him?
Yeah.
Yes, they made the right decision because this guy has come out, and with the rejuvenance he's had in his career in Tennessee, Charlton, I don't think they have to draft another quarterback. Mariota's going to have to look for a new home. But I think Tennessee has found their quarterback. And you think about Vrabel's lineage. This is a guy who played for Bill Belichick. He coached under Andy Reid. He knows what the mobility of a quarterback will do in your system, being there in Kansas City when they had Alex Smith and his mobility. And he's done the same thing in rekindling Tannehill's career.
He really has, Big C. Say it ain't so. In New England, Beantown, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, 9-4 in the season with a 23-16 win over the New England Patriots. A lot of things going on in New England, and the Chiefs clinched the AFC West. And it wasn't even a big game by Patrick Mahomes. The real thing is the only time I think that I've seen New England get robbed by this phantom non-calls or calls when the receiver that was out of Arizona State did not step out of bounds. And Tom Brady hit him, but Belichick was already out of replays, so he didn't have time to go back. And N'Keal Harry didn't step out of bounds. They showed it on TV. He was about 2 inches from out of bounds. Whether you run out of timeouts or not, or replays or not, or challenges or not, that's something the NFL should not say, okay, well, let's forget it because the coach already challenged. That's a joke to me. That could cost them the AFC East. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's still part of the NFL rules, Charlton, but it was more than just that one play. Think about when they had the interception of Patrick Mahomes and had to punt the ball 3 plays later. So it's not just the one play in the game that makes the game. It's always a play that we want to focus on, but you have to focus on the entire game. The Kansas City Chiefs went out and did what they needed to do in New England. New England is struggling offensively right now. Their defense has gotten tired because they spent so much time on the field. The Patriots are struggling and backing into the playoffs.
Yeah, backing is what they are doing, and you can't backslide if you want to win, Big C. But it's still, Belichick's a Jedi Knight, and sometimes he makes his best moonshine when he's desperate, Big C. The Steelers go to 8-5 with a 23-17 win over the Arizona Cardinals, who fall to 3-9-1. The Steelers, I'm telling you, there's something about what a coach this. Everybody's been saying, get rid of him. Tomlin's not there anymore. He's lost the locker room. A lot of those guys that he was accused of losing have left. They've moved on to other teams, or they've been injured, or whatever it is. But this is a team that has their head coach in line for at least Coach of the Year mentioning. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that players love their coach. When you think about Mike Tomlin, everybody's talked about being up for Coach of the Year. You got the kid Shanahan out there in San Francisco. You got Harbaugh in Baltimore.
Yeah.
You got Peyton in New Orleans. When you talk about teams around the league and where they should be, Mike Tomlin, this is a team that started out 1-4.
Yeah.
They lost their starting quarterback first game of the season. They lost their top running back 4 games into the season. They've lost their top receiver. You don't even know who the hell catching the ball for Pittsburgh right now.
No.
They got a young defense, Charlton. They made some midseason trades. They got a bunch of rookies playing on defense. But you have a coach that's able to motivate players and let them understand what their task is in playing pro football if you want to be there. That's what Mike Tomlin has done. When you talk about the best facilitator right now in the NFL from the sideline position, that's Mike Tomlin. This is a guy who has done more with less than any coach in the NFL right now. You even think about McDermott in Buffalo and the job that he's done in turning around the Bills.
Yeah.
But Mike Tomlin has done this with a third-string undrafted quarterback right now. They're on a roll, and that defense is what we call steel curtain is what they're playing football right now in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin has done a marvelous job, and there's nobody in the NFL doing a better job coaching than him.
Big C, final 3 minutes. We go to L.A. We have the Rams getting on the right side of the finish line, 28-12 over the Seahawks. They go to 8-5, drop the Seahawks to 10-3, and now the Rams are still thinking of a playoff season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Rams right now are all about Todd Gurley. When you look at what Todd Gurley has done in the last 2 games, everybody said, what's wrong with Todd Gurley? Well, he hadn't had the football. He's touched the ball over 20 times in the last 2 games. He's had over 100 yards of total offense in each of the last 2 games, which has really allowed Jared Goff to be comfortable in the pocket. And Robert Woods is back also, one of his key components at receiver. So when those elements are working together and it all runs through Todd Gurley just like it did through Nick Chubb, getting those yards in Cleveland, making that team successful. Same thing in Los Angeles with Todd Gurley. When he's running the ball, the Rams are going to have success.
Final story tonight, we have Eli's back in the saddle. The Giants are at the Eagles, Big C, and the Eagles are trying to extend their season. Will they get it, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the Eagles don't mind inclement weather when you think about a lot of them being up there in Alaska and the Northwest Charlton, flying around in the cold weather. It's raining like crazy in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Eli, he's a kid in the candy store tonight, Charlton. He can't do anything wrong, regardless of the game that he has. If he goes out and he gets drugged by the Eagles, people say, well, he's rusty, he's been sitting on the bench. If he comes out and he's competitive, Charlton, they're going to say this is what the Giants could have had all year long.
Yeah.
Me, I think that the Philadelphia Eagles run away with this one.
Well, I look forward to seeing Eli back real quick. Monday night scheduled for NBA basketball, L.A. Clippers at Indiana. You have Cleveland at Boston, Detroit at New Orleans or Orlando at Milwaukee, Sacramento Kings at the Houston Rockets, Toronto at Chicago, Minnesota at Phoenix, Oklahoma City at Utah, and Memphis at Golden State. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, today was all about the world of baseball and Steven Strasburg and the World Series champion Washington Nationals. Steven Strasburg signed the richest pitcher contract today in the history of baseball.
Wow.
7 years, $200 $245 million. And so he will be 37 by the time this contract runs out, and halfway through it, everybody will have passed him. But you think about the heroics that he has had in the past 2 years with the Washington Nationals, being undefeated in the playoffs the last 2 years, and this year winning a World Series championship and World Series MVP. It's worth $245 million over 7 years to that young man.
I want $240 million. I'm sure you want it too. Every Monday through Friday at 5 to 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.